Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Benedict Ngala. I'm originally from Kenya and currently I'm an Associate Professor of Sociology at Montgomery College. I've been teaching Introduction to Sociology for the last 10 or so years, both at the university level as well as community college level. Teaching Introduction to Sociology is a very enriching experience because in this course, students deal with very many familiar issues that constitute society, things like culture, race, gender, ethnicity, poverty, crime, family, population, etc. In this case, studying sociology becomes like a process of discovery, which helps us see how different pieces fit together. As we begin to see the interconnections among these different pieces, our perspectives change as we shift from the many disjointed pieces to the whole that is formed by them. Right now, we have become global citizens, and every aspect of our life experiences in the 21st century is increasingly influenced by the global economy and its networks. One of the greatest opportunities I use in my introductory sociology classes to create the awareness of globalization is Day 1 class introduction. I ask students to introduce themselves by saying their names, where they come from, more specifically in terms of nationality, and other things that they feel they can share with their classmates on Day 1. This is always the starting point where you see in the faces of students, they realize that their class is characterized by diversity in terms of culture, in terms of nationality, and race. Obviously, the impact that you see this creating in them, if you ask them the question, what have you learned from the introduction, is that it gives them an awareness to the differences, whereby in any given typical classroom, whether in the US, whether in Kenya where I come from, or even in Europe, you have different faces in the classroom. You have different people from different cultural backgrounds. Now, this also creates an attitude of sensitivity to differences, whereby they learn immediately that they'll be journeying together with people of different backgrounds. And at the same time, this calls for tolerance to such differences, whereby they open up to give and take, meaning they share with other students from different cultural backgrounds what are the main things that pertain to the US society, and they also learn different information that students that have different backgrounds bring with them to the classroom. The other opportunity I have is that I've been fortunate to have traveled in different parts of the world. I've been a student in Africa, in Kenya, my country. I've been a student in Italy, in Europe. I've been a student for so many years in the United States, and I was also a student in the United Kingdom. So I bring to classroom this rich experience in terms of professional as well as my own personal life. And I use these examples a lot. For example, I tell my students that I come from a group, an ethnic group in Kenya called the Luos, that have some unique cultural traits. And one of the gestures which has remained a value amongst my people is their conception of a guest. They see a guest as a blessing. And one of the gestures they use to demonstrate that is that they cook a meal for the guests. And you know how cooking the meal in the village, how long it takes. So it requires a lot of patience. In other words, if you go to visit somebody, you have to be patient and spend good quality time with them. But whenever I go home these days, I find myself a little bit different. In other words, I look at my clock. I work with a schedule. I tell my relatives or friends, I'll come to see you at 2, and then I have to go away by 4 because I'm going somewhere else. I have to catch up with so many things, such that my people see me as a totally changed person. Some of them, maybe in quotes, call me a spoiled person. Now, when I ask the students, why do you think my behavior has changed so much as compared to the members of my ethnic group? The answer is, because you have lived in the United States. And I tell them, right, I've become a product of the United States. So in addition to those characteristics that are acquired in Kenya, there are some additional ones. So for my people, especially those who have never had the chance to travel outside, to meet people that have different backgrounds, for them to understand me, they need to know a little bit about the way of life in the United States. And to me, this is part of the globalization process. In other words, right now, whether in class, whether at the workplace, we are given this challenge that things we do, the way we think, embraces that global idea of understanding things, not just restricted to one particular culture, one particular society. Another opportunity I use in my classes is to try to get to know what kind of understanding students have about globalization. So I give them a question. When was the first time that you heard about globalization? And what does it mean to you? Many of them express the fact that they heard about globalization for the first time, like in the elementary school or somewhere in the high school or the first year of college. Some of them actually hear about the word for the first time in my classes when I ask them the question. Of course, they express different understandings, and most of the time culture is one of those. They talk about cultural diffusion. They talk about technology. They talk about trade. They talk about outsourcing of jobs, such that in the end, their understanding of globalization immediately reveals different characteristics of globalization, the positive ones as well as the negative ones. And I tell them, right, in order to understand the impact that it has for us, we need to move beyond the positive ones to include also those negative ones. And in addition to the knowledge they bring to class about globalization, I tell them, well, globalization has been there for more than 500 years. It's just that it passes from one stage to another one. And the current stage looks a little bit different, such that somebody may think it's something that is new. No, it's not new. It's just that the characteristics that comes along with it at the moment, things like technology, things like multinational cooperation, things like neoliberalism are the ones that make it to appear as something new. So I tell them, look, for a long time we have been products of this process. I see globalization as a process. And as a process, it has created this new reality that we can't do without. And one of them, obviously, is diversity. So in my view, students that attend introduction sociology class, it gives them the privilege, because introduction sociology class is broadly foundational and is there to give them the basic understanding of this process that is taking place in the world, this process called globalization, which is reculturing and having effects in the schooling system. Another example which I have, and I've started to share it in my classes, over the summer I took some of our students from Montgomery College to the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And apart from some bit of cultural shock, noticing the differences, they were also impressed that in the classrooms, actually, professors were using examples from the United States to explain certain things that they were learning in the class, which to me shows that Any good understanding these days in the classroom has to embrace that notion of diversity. So introduction to sociology, yes, can be a good answer to internationalizing the curriculum or creating an awareness about globalization, which our students in the 21st century have to deal with in the places where they live, at school, as well as at the workplace.